Welcome everyone to Simply Bitcoin. We break down the news from Twitter, the daily fail, meme review, software releases, hardware releases, websites by plebes or plebs. Joining us today is a very special guest, fellow Bitcoiner and co-founder of 21st Paradigm, Dylan LeClaire. He's going to be joining in on the fun a little bit later, but for now, we're going to the numbers. Let's do it. Number time! At the time of this recording, the block height is 701,738. The Bitcoin price, 43,480. Chain rewrite days, 848. Total public Lightning capacity, 2,752.87. Sats per dollar, 2,300. And blocks to the halvening, 138,262.
So, Phil, man, I'm telling you, there's a pattern, bro. When Bitcoin dips, the public Lightning capacity goes up.
Yeah.
It's undeniable, man. It's undeniable. Can't deny it. But anyways, guys, stop right now and stack, because Bitcoin's cheap. It's under 50K. You'll be able to tell your grandchildren, they're not going to believe you, that you were able to stack Bitcoin in the year 2021, under 50K. They're just going to say, I don't believe you. But then you're going to show them, and they're going to want to take it away from you. But you're going to tell them, have fun staying poor. Anyways, Phil, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just... I think that you're absolutely onto something with the fact that every single time it dips, I think that that's what it is. It's just it costs less to open the channels, right? So people are, saying, all right, that's my moment to open up these big girthy Lightning channels.
Girthy. Interesting choice of words, Phil. Interesting choice of words. Anyways. Okay, Phil, it's time for
the Daily Fail, sponsored by
Pirate Hash.
I didn't actually think it was going to be this easy to, bring in rug pulls on a weekly basis. At this point, we pretty much, we've had I think five or 6 days straight of rug pulls. Let's dive into this one, okay? DeFi hack alert. The protocol, this protocol lost over 12 million in Bitcoin. Okay, and that's September 20th, right? So the DeFi protocol P Network alerted the community of a 277 Bitcoin hack, which amounts to 12.67 million in USD. According to the P Network's Twitter thread, the bug has been identified, and the protocol is currently rehabilitating it. So it's self-healing. Lets you hack it and then it fixes itself. That's nice. Anyways, to reactivate the bridges once secured, which should take mere hours. It's like a story they're telling you. They're selling you the story. Anyways, the network assures that they are working rigorously towards the solution for their PBTC and BSC holders and will further update the developments. Additionally, the network has even offered a bounty to the hacker worth 1.5 mil upon returning all funds. Nice, huh? Hack them and then get paid for it. This is just the icing on the cake at the end of this one, right? Because we keep showing you one rug pull after another. We show you the rec leaderboards. We've got the Token Sniffer website, which is up to, like I said a couple of days ago, 45,000 identified hacks and scams. Anyways, here we go. DeFi hack frenzy. Multiple protocols have suffered the consequences of the DeFi hack frenzy, including Cream Finance that was exploited for 462 million in AMP tokens and 2,804.96 ETH tokens. Neko Network that lost over 2 million in stable coins. Neko Network attacker's address obtained 2 million USDT. What is that? 390,000 BUSD and 1 BTCB. Furthermore, the historical hack of Poly Network, right, was worth $610 million, recently recovered all its funds from the hack. However, it had to travel a long way to refund its users' stolen funds.
Remember, Phil, this is the future of finance. This is DeFi, which isn't really DeFi. This is CeFi, or else all of that stuff couldn't really happen. And man, if you have example after example after example after example that we've been covering, relentlessly on this show, I hope that's shown you guys that, these smart contracts that are so-called audited, right, doesn't really mean shit, and there's a really simple reason for that. Not that many people could understand, the coding in the smart contract, right? And the people that write the smart contract are essentially God. And, when they have those God tools, they use it just to drain the thing and, and enrich themselves. How do you protect yourself from this? Just focus on Bitcoin. That's all you got to do. Anyways, Dylan, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh boy, DeFi. It's kind of ironic. It's almost like paradoxical. It's like decentralized in name only. A lot of these things, and it's sad to see. I mean, yes, there are a lot of people that have speculated on various low market cap liquid altcoins and made a lot, but there's also, I think, many more that have lost everything. Like the people that there's ultra high net worth whales that can afford to lose $1 million, but when someone's YOLOing their life savings on some random protocol on Binance, it's sad to see. And you're exactly right. When someone has a kill switch on these protocols, like, you'll see like, we froze the network. I mean, not in this one specifically, but we paused the network. We'll have it up running soon. There's no decentralization there at all. And I think Bitcoin is the only decentralized financial cryptocurrency, if you want to call it that. The rest is just it's a lot of noise.
Yep, it's noise, it's dog shit, it's mierda. So many different words to describe it. To add to what Dylan was saying, you see this, right? You see this with all the DeFi guys when they get, invited on CNBC, to talk about the regulations and whatever. And you notice Bitcoiners are just like sitting back and saying, it's okay. And the reason for that is because Bitcoin has reached a sufficient level of decentralization, right, that it can withstand a nation state attack. You have the example of China banning all Bitcoin mining, and because of the incentives of Bitcoin, right, the hash rate recovered. Now, could you say the same about, these so-called, shit coins, these DeFi protocols? No, you can't, right? There's a head to chop off. In the case of Cardano, it's Charles Hoskinson. In the case of Ethereum, it's Vitalik. What happens if they arrest Vitalik? What happens if AWS decides to shut down Ethereum nodes because they're so resource heavy, they have to be centralized? What happens to those networks, right? They come to they just freeze, right? So again, Bitcoin puts the centralization overall. Don't buy into the tech narrative. Buy yourself the scarcest asset that has ever existed in the history of mankind. Phil, show us the next fail. Please.
Yes. Bear with me. I'm going to try to bring some points together, as I was just saying, before we started filming, and you guys will see how essentially when we zoom out and we look at what these creatures that we have in government are doing. Okay, they will use any narrative possible to get their way. And what am I talking about? So even though this article was really, about Bitcoin's price and shitcoin's prices, what really got me thinking was this piece right here, okay? The current bearish sentiment in the markets was spurred on yesterday by comments from the SEC chair, Gary Gensler. In an interview with the Washington Post, Gensler firmly outlined his belief that many crypto assets should be classed as securities, thus falling under the jurisdiction of the SEC. Commenting on the current lack of regulation for crypto assets, Gensler said, "I do really fear that we'll keep bringing these enforcement cases, but there's going to be a problem on trading and lending platforms. And frankly, when that happens, a lot of people are going to get hurt." Okay, whatever. We get it, right? People get hurt even in the current system, which supposedly has all of this regulation. So I digress. Anyways, but it's mitigated risk. Anyways, Michael Hsu, the acting chief of the Office of the Controller, also expressed negative views on the crypto industry in a webcast with the Blockchain Association. Hsu issued a strong warning to listeners comparing decentralized finance in the crypto industry, this is the piece, to the practices which brought about the 2008 financial crisis. Crypto DeFi today is on a path that looks similar to CDs, credit default swaps, in the early 2000s, he said. I want you to really pay attention to this disingenuous shithead type of language, okay? Which, don't get me wrong, I don't care about DeFi or any of that crap. That is all nonsense and garbage. But what they are doing is very crafty and clever. Right? This is how they get their foot in the door. This is how they, right? This is how they put their hands in the cookie jar. It's like, this is how it goes. So, we're talking about the 2008 financial crisis. Like what really brought that on? Because don't get me wrong, these were the same people. Gary Gensler is part of the same people. Michael Hsu is part of the same people that dismantled the very laws that were essentially stopping the, how bad that credit crisis, got, which, don't get me wrong, it did get that bad because they removed it. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the Glass-Steagall Act. The Banking Act of 1933, Glass-Steagall. The Glass-Steagall Act effectively separated commercial banking from investment banking and created the Federal Deposit Insurance Company, right? The FDIC, among other things. It was one of the most widely debated legislative initiatives before being signed into law by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Okay. So they made a point of separating those two for a reason. Now, don't get me wrong. We're not standing up for traditional banking or anything like that. Everything, right? There are some parts of it where they did get some things right. It has worked. It's just they keep pissing away all of our money because they're selfish and psychotic. Anyways, okay. Now keep in mind, right? When did the crisis happen? 2008. Okay, 2008. In 1999, after decades of lobbying and proposed legislation, some Glass-Steagall provisions were repealed. As part of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, institutions could participate in both commercial and investment activities. This now all of a sudden meant, right, that banks were now susceptible to this type of risk. So, the government is supposed to be standing up for us. They're supposed to be helping us, right? The retail investor, we're doing what we can to help you, right? Right. Greenspan calls for repeal of the Glass-Steagall Bank Law, right? Anyways, Federal Reserve Board Chairman. Look at that. The Federal Reserve Board Chairman. Lining the Fed up with other federal bank regulators yesterday called on Congress to repeal a 54-year-old law that separates commercial banking from securities underwriting. I want you to look at that date. 1987. They've been essentially trying to dismantle America from within for many years, okay? Many years. These are, anyways, this is just psychotic. Okay. Warning that banks will become the dinosaurs of financial services if the Depression-era law is not repealed. Greenspan said that the Fed believes banking can be tied to securities underwriting without subjecting federally insured deposits at banks to the risks inherent in the stock market. Were you wrong, bud? Were you wrong? Okay? Because the 2008 mortgage crisis happened. So the FDIC did have to step in. There were problems. Okay? Why did I go through all of this? You saw at the beginning how they're essentially trying to use the shitcoins as a way in, right? They're going to come in and seem to try to save everyone. But we have already shown throughout history that they come in, they dismantle the things that help the retail investors so that they can plunder whatever's left. So I mean, I couldn't believe it when I read that, right? When he mentioned that this was likened to the 2008 mortgage crisis, I'm like, don't get me wrong, right? There's a whole bunch of scumbags dealing with shitcoins and dealing with DeFi. But the government is completely two-faced and insane. And on one hand, is sitting there telling you that they're trying to help you, and on the other hand, actively pushing the knife into your back. So
Yeah.
Your
no.
thoughts, man?
No, you're absolutely right, and it's funny because for some reason, we always sync up, and the news section has something to do with this as well, right? And it's just gonna further confirm exactly what it is you're saying, and it's look the government, the nation state, right? Under the fiat standard, is self-serving, okay, and they come off as like, look, this is to protect the consumer. But it's not to protect the consumer, as Phil just presented so much evidence for. It's mostly just to protect the institutions themselves, protect the government themselves, right? Or to protect the people, the high, the high net worth donors, right, that are trying to influence the system in which benefits them the most, right? So clearly, Alan Greenspan, right, he repealed this, right, this law that was, enacted for 47 years. It didn't cause any of these, great recessions, right? It was like helping the public, right? And then he repealed it, for, I guess, to help his Wall Street cronies. I have no idea, but it's funny because you fast forward now to this point where, Bitcoin and shitcoins are actually benefiting the retail consumer, right? And now they want to actually pass more regulations to stop the retail consumer from benefiting too much. So it's like clearly these regulations that the government, that nation states pass, it's not so much to help the people, it's to help the institutions themselves, to help their survival, right? And in the case of Bitcoin, right, which is a direct attack to the money printers, right, which is, how they're able to afford everything that they do, like leaving $80 billion in Afghanistan, all the social welfare programs, right? Those programs are only affordable because of the money printer and because the U.S. is the world reserve currency. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they used, to protect the consumer, to crack down, and to go after Bitcoiners. You saw this as an example in the infrastructure bill, right, where they snuck in at last second, this law, right, that would essentially make, potentially node operators and Bitcoin miners, brokers, and it's an unenforceable law. But what it does do is it gives the government a really big stick to go after Bitcoiners and to make examples out of them, right? So again, this just all goes to show, guys, that the government is self-serving. They don't really care about the public, right? And an example of that was in 2008 when no bankers went to jail, and it was actually Main Street that bailed them out, and that's when the QE money printing experiment started. Anyways, Dylan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of your points there. I think, like the incumbents, the big banks, they have everything to lose essentially. The insiders, the politically, connected class of people that have stood to benefit from the monetary expansion that's occurred over the last, 50 years in particular, but really over the last century. What Bitcoin fixes is fractional reserve banking, essentially, right? Like the gold link was.
Wait,
was
hold on,
broken.
Dylan. Let me stop you right there. We're not on a fractionally reserved banking system anymore, my friend. Since 2020, we're on a zero fractionally reserved banking system. Sorry, continue.
No reserve requirement, which is asinine. But I think what they're really scared about is you have now, even with so-called like stable coins, right? You have a free market for money where the Fed comes in and they set the Fed funds rate and they say, hey, all the commercial banks, this is what we'll lend you money at, and you can lend off of this. And that was, how they kind of control the cost of capital for the last century, since 1913. But now you have Bitcoin, but you also have a million other, shit coins, as well as stable coins that have free open interest rates. They have free, they have the free markets. And so I can take USDC or Tether or Bitcoin and I can lend against it. I can borrow against it. I can do all these things. And if you want to borrow Tether or borrow USDC on the free market, on these exchanges or, decentralized platforms, however if you want to call them decentralized, regardless, I'm not getting 0% like I would at a commercial bank. I'm getting 8%. I'm getting 12%, right? Like this is because who in their right mind would lend, why would you ever lend dollars for less than that in this environment? And you wouldn't. And that's the thing. And so they're sitting there scratching their head saying, hey, what are we going to do about this? And they're going to come in and say, hey, investor protection, we need to protect you guys from yourselves, when in reality I like 100% agree with you guys, they're protecting, the incumbents.
They're protecting the status quo. That's exactly what it is. Completely agree with you, Dylan. But it's okay, because Bitcoin fixes this. Anyways, Phil, it's time for
The Daily Meme Review, sponsored by
Citadel 21. All right, everybody, the meme for today is brought to us by Stony Bison. Definitely give this toxic plebe a follow. Let's check out his meme. Stock traders, 2%. Bitcoin hodlers, negative 40%. Stock in the dip. It's only in Bitcoin that people get happy when the price goes down because it's cheaper sats. Anyways, moving on to the next meme. It's brought to us by Bitcoin Sampo, still fused. Should I buy Bitcoin or continue living in an illusion? Ooh. That's a deep meme. Yes, get out of the fiat matrix. Take the orange pill. Opt the F out. Anyways, let's check out the last meme. Last but not least, by Plan_Marcus. Definitely go give him a follow. Some awesome memes. This first they laugh at you, then Bitcoin trashes their plans completely. This is Christine Lagarde, and I think this is a guy from Bank of International Settlements. 2017 Bitcoiners don't know about our central bank digital currencies. 2021 Bitcoins don't care about our central bank digital currencies. And there's Christine Lagarde freaking out. Oh, Christine Lagarde. So yeah, man, super, super awesome memes. And Phil, because they were so good, I'm going to give it an awesome, awesome score. This badass hat from Samson Mao. The Taproot hat, baby. The Taproot hat. What about you, Phil? What would you give that meme?
I like it. Great. I mean, look, those were all great memes. You know what? I think this is fitting. Definitely between all those memes, I am going with, this was the second Lightning node that I had CryptoCloaks print for me. This was my Reckless node, and it was, I think, the first glow-in-the-dark node that he printed for a customer.
Dude, sick.
Yeah.
Sick. Awesome. All right.
You know I like these memes.
Yeah, they're a great meme. So, Dylan, last but not least, what would you give those memes?
So assigning an object to the meme review, I would say this is the Cypher wheel. Pretty solid.
Hell yeah, man.
Quality product, great meme.
Absolutely, man. Man, oh my God, I forget your name. He's such a good guy. I met him at BitBlock Boom. The founder of Cypher Wheel. I forget his name. Dylan, can you help me out? Danny. I think his name is Danny. Anyways, shout out to what you guys are doing. I remember the dog, Archie, was part of the whole thing. But yeah, they make amazing products. He just released a stamp one, so you don't have to put your seed in the Cypher Wheel, which takes a lot of time. Now you could stamp it on, I think it's on a brass plate. Anyways, really, really cool stuff. Amazing memes. A Cypher Wheel, a lightning glow-in-the-dark node, a Samson Mao Taproot hat. Anyways, guys, we want to know, do you agree with our scores? Do you disagree? Let us know down in the comments. And, of course, link us some memes to review in our Telegram group, because we review memes, because it's a meme review. So link us memes. Anyways, Phil, it's time for
The Daily News, sponsored by
CryptoCloaks.
I do think this new technology is a very interesting pushing at the side of central banks around the globe to reconsider how to provide payment systems. But at the same time, I don't think technologies long last outside of a social and public policy framework. And in this case, we don't undermine the stability of the system.
The appeal of these new instruments of cryptocurrencies is precisely that they're not mediated by banks, by existing financial institutions, and that they're outside of traditional regulation. That's part of why they've arisen. And the question is whether, if you institute the kind of regime you're talking about, that wouldn't just accelerate the push of these instruments into other jurisdictions, other unregulated areas. It's almost like a reverse arms race. People would find new ways to escape your scrutiny. Are you worried about that?
David, new technologies come along. The internet came along, and we all saw it popularized in the 1990s. And there's a question, well, how is that going to fit within our public policy goals and framework? Do we tax commerce on the internet? What about speech on the internet? And we had to sort through these things. So new technology is generally a good thing. It challenges the establishment. But I don't think that new technologies really long exist outside of public policy frameworks.
There you have, the head of the SEC, Gary Gensler, kind of stuck in a hard place. And I also want to read you another quote that he said from that same interview that we didn't have time to play. He said, private forms of money are not sustainable in the long run, to quote him, right? So he's kind of stuck in a hard place. Right, because he has to justify the bureaucracy, and he's basically making the case that, if the bureaucracy is not there, these things won't work. But that's the thing with Bitcoin, and I think the reporter caught him off guard a little bit there, and he really highlighted, he's like, look, Bitcoin already has rules. In fact, if you could regulate Bitcoin, it would defeat the purpose of Bitcoin in the first place. Bitcoin, the innovation of Bitcoin is rules without rulers, right? So again, you're having a clash between the traditional, the status quo, the powers that be, right? They're trying to make sense of this, and I think Gary Gensler is completely off base when he compares Bitcoin, right, to the incoming of the internet. Because the incoming of the internet, yes, it empowered people to talk freely, right? It did destroy the monopoly, the state's monopoly on information, but Bitcoin actually destroys the state's monopoly on the creation of money, which is the way that the state pays for things in general, right? So again, right, you have Gary Gensler trying to justify the bureaucracy and trying to make a case, right, why that bureaucracy is necessary, right? Anyways, guys, thoughts?
I just think that he's absolutely hilarious to watch. I mean, for real. It's just funny to watch him try to weave through this, because at the end of the day, right? This is all just a giant show, right? Like it's all just a huge show. They know that, look, they know that they can't touch Bitcoin. They know that they can do whatever they want to the shitcoins, all right? And that's exactly what's going to happen. But they are going to try their best to scare everyone into thinking it's all the exact same thing. That's, to me, at a high level, like that's what I think they're doing, and it's like you said, he misses, he is completely off base. And as a result, what we've been saying for months is that because they don't actually understand, or maybe they're choosing not to understand, or they're pretending not to understand, it just makes all of these efforts completely futile.
Yeah. What do you think?
I have a little bit of a different viewpoint, or maybe a perspective, and this is maybe more of like a theory, but I've heard some people like with some in the know say this, so it kind of piqued my interest when I heard it. It was that Gensler, what he's essentially trying to do is he's establishing a precedent. You'll like, he keeps banging home the points, pre-mine, marketing team, all this stuff. And he's basically saying, hey, everything, without really saying any names, everything but Bitcoin's a security. And Bitcoin has already been ruled to not be a security. And I think they're really just trying to clamp these this down because they have 18 Bitcoin ETF applications in the pipe, and increasingly so. And there's a lot of money behind this that in their ear saying, hey, we need this approved, we need this approved. But there's kind of a gray line between like, hey, what's okay, Bitcoin's approved. All right. Now my Ethereum ETF application, can you accept it, sir? Can you accept my Litecoin ETF? Can you accept my Ripple ETF? Like, you know what I mean? And I think they don't have the bandwidth to handle all of that, one. And so I think they establish that precedent, and then they say, okay, no shitcoins, essentially. Because, they want to get this through, or maybe not Gary Gensler himself, but a lot of big money with a lot of influence wants this. And so, you see like Canada has their own Bitcoin ETF, but they also have an Ethereum ETF, right? So I think, and they don't want to subject themselves to 10,000 shitcoin ETF applications. They just don't have the bandwidth for that. So I think they're drawing a really hard line in the sand. That's one. And the thing that I thought was pretty funny there was he said private money doesn't last when the Federal Reserve is a private central bank. owned by shareholders that issues their own currency, where Bitcoin is the most public monetary asset the world has ever seen, with a transparent ownership. So I don't know. That's just kind of funny and ironic. In that sense, I agree with Gary.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because it's they're projecting, they're saying the exact opposite of what Bitcoin is. And I love the part where he doesn't mention why people are fleeing to Bitcoin and shitcoin, specifically more so Bitcoin. He doesn't mention that part, right? All he mentions is investor protection, right? Why aren't investors being protected by the uncontrolled money printing by the private issuance of money by the Fed? Here is an image of the M1 money stock. We like to show this all the time. Look at 2020. It is literally a hockey stick up, and all this money printing makes anyone who holds dollars poorer. So this is something that Gary Gensler is not addressing. Right? He's not addressing this at all. He doesn't even mention this. Why are people fleeing to Bitcoin and shitcoins? Because they're trying to save their time. They're trying to save their value. They're trying to save their energy, right? And this is affecting people. In the beginning of the year, Phil and I showed you many articles about how they said that the inflation wasn't so bad. It wasn't going to be so crazy, right? But now the truth, the White House released this propaganda thing on the 4th of July, basically saying that you're going to save 16 cents on your hot dog previous to last year, right? But now they can't hide it anymore. There's too much shit to sweep under the rug. Check out this article by the BBC. Inflation to remain higher for 2 years. They keep kicking that can down the road. You know, it's 2 years. They're not saying maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5. It's 2 years, right? You have an article by the Wall Street Journal. Inflation is all over the place, right? And Gary Gensler said something very specific, and I want to kind of double back to that. He said private forms of money are not sustainable in the long run. Well, I highly disagree with you. Check out this tweet by Nayib Bukele. 1.6 million Salvadorians already use the Chivo wallet, right? Again, no central authority. This is all Bitcoin. This is all whatever. No committee, no approval, no whatever. It's just working. How popular is 1.6 Salvadorians? That's about 20% of the whole goddamn country just downloaded an app that has only been on the App Store for like maybe less than 20 days. But anyways, what's fascinating about this, right, is that it keeps going, right? It's also people in the United States, right? You have other athletes, right, that are saying, hey, I want to get paid in Bitcoin. This came out today. Tom Brady said he would love to get paid in Bitcoin, right? You have surveys being done. 42% of Texans want to make Bitcoin legal tender. A recent poll conducted by Redfield and Wilton Strategies on 9,700 eligible voters suggests that 42% of Texans would love to make Bitcoin an official currency. And why is that? Why is this? Because of inflation, because people are constantly losing value in the money in which they're being paid, right? And again, the increases in salary are not matching up with the inflation. Gary Gensler mentions none of this. None of this. His sole purpose is just to protect the powers at be. Guys, you have any thoughts?
You nailed it. I mean, I think he also made a comment about saving. He's like, oh, saving's good. Everyone should start saving for college, or I don't even remember the exact context. And it's like, you nailed it, Gary. Like, I don't want to invest. I just want to save, my man. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stack sats to my cold storage and save for my future self. I don't need any protection there. So, that's pretty much it. I'm interested to kind of see what like the coming months hold with shitcoin regulation and all of that with stable coins. I think they really are grasping to keep this monopoly, this monetary monopoly. And so, obviously Bitcoin is untouchable. They can clamp down on ramps or off ramps. I think that genie's out of the bottle, but they can do everything in their power to limit it. But ultimately, and I'm not rooting for shitcoins to, I think Ethereum will crash and burn eventually anyway. You don't have to chop the head off, but do they? Maybe. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out and what projects are actually sufficiently decentralized or not.
Yeah, and let's focus a little bit on, the government, right? Because you have Gary Gensler doing, these things, to protect investor protection. Then you have the sneaking in last minute into the infrastructure bill, these crazy regulations, right? Now Biden is floating this idea of every $600 transaction is going to be monitored in the infrastructure bill. Like I mentioned before, if you're a Bitcoin miner, if you're a Bitcoin node, if you're a Lightning node operator, you might be considered a broker, right? So clearly what Dylan was saying about them wanting to keep their monopoly, they're doing everything in their power. And let me show you a little bit more examples of this, right? This is an article that came out. I want you guys to pay attention to the date, September 17th, U.S. to sanction Bitcoin and shitcoin exchanges wallets used by ransomware. That's a very convenient excuse. Anyways, moving on. 2 days later, September 21st, U.S. Treasury sanctions Russia-based crypto exchange for laundering over 160 million in Bitcoin. Now, I remember, guys, there's a lot of signal, but there's a lot of noise, but I want you to pay attention to the signal. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control has announced a new round of sanctions targeting over-the-counter crypto exchange SUEX. Now, the reason that I highlighted this was because the Office of Foreign Asset Control was the people that were behind the censoring of blocks, right? Back in when Marathon tried doing this, right? I'll read the passage. In late March, the company announced that it would be launching the first North American Bitcoin mining pool fully compliant with U.S. regulations, including anti-money laundering and Office of Foreign Asset Control standards. So when they tried to censor blocks, it was the same government agency, right, responsible for allegedly, placing sanctions on a Russia-based shitcoin and Bitcoin exchange. Now, the interesting part about this, right, is that I see this as kind of like a show of strength, right? Because at the end of the day, place sanctions on Bitcoin. How does that work? It doesn't work, right? So again, it's kind of like a show of strength, and clearly you see, you see them trying to implement the legacy system on top of Bitcoin, right? You see this in the infrastructure bill as well, right? Where they snuck this into the part that wasn't really discussed much. Essentially, part of the infrastructure bill included a passage where, let me try to pull it up. It included a package where the infrastructure bill would require similar reporting when businesses receive more than $10,000 in Bitcoin and shitcoins, right? So again, they're trying to make trying to make Bitcoin, and they're trying to put regulations on top of Bitcoin to try to make it more like the legacy system and able for them to keep that monopoly on money, right? So it's crazy. All these things are happening, but if you pay attention, they're really easy to notice. You have Gary Gensler on one side, you have the Treasury on the other side. We have a hell of a fight in front of us, but it's good to stay on top of these things and cover them. Phil, what are your thoughts? And then we'll get Dylan's.
Yeah, I think this is one of those situations with the, not that I like to quote Taleb's work at all, but this is perfect example of the bed of Procrustes, right? Like where this is what they do with the system. If the person's too tall, they cut off their legs. If it's too short, then they stretch them. And this is exactly what they're trying to do with Bitcoin, where they're going to sit there and they're going to try to place their Frankenstein system on top of it, which, look, it barely works the way it is now. So, I just don't see it working, right? We've been saying it for so long. They know it doesn't work either. Why do you think they keep talking about CBDCs? They completely understand that they can't make this Frankenstein work. They get it.
They get it, but that doesn't mean they're not going to try, man.
Oh no, they're not going to stop trying.
They're going to try. What do you think, Dylan, to wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, they're going to try to do all they can, but ultimately, I mean, even Marathon, if you're looking at like their OFAC compliant blocks, like the Cyber Hornets roasted the hell out of them and won. Like, it was funny. They said, all right, this is a clean block. And I believe there's some sort of thing in the protocol, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nico, I know you mine, that the Coinbase transaction, like when you mine the block, you can't move it for a certain amount of time, or like there was some sort of lag there. And a lot of people sent dust, like tainted dust UTXOs to their block and were like, hey, what are you gonna do? Not spend it now? Like, just, the attack on fungibility was just complete bullshit. And so, and never mind the fact that, the highest paying transactions, like if you're going to censor blocks, all right, or censor transactions, like I'll just pay a higher fee, and I'll be mined by someone else. And so, the economic incentives don't align to sanction Bitcoin. And also, just like, it's just not feasible. And so, it's fun to see them try, and they're going to crash and burn plenty of times. But yeah, I mean, I think you just have a lot of people that are kind of in this legacy mindset. They're going to have to come to terms with Bitcoin. It's like this huge kind of, slap in the face reality check for a lot of people. Like, we've had our orange pill moment and we've embraced Bitcoin. But for a lot of these incumbents, the orange pill moment is going to be quite dark when they realize the world isn't how they thought it worked. And, it's a big reality check. So that's going to be something that happens over this coming decade. And there's going to be a lot of people upset, and, they can just cry harder. It's like, what are you going to argue against technology? Like, no, it's occurring, and that's that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Bitcoin is dramatically changing the balance of power from the state back to the individual. It's empowering the individual. Literally, you memorize a 24-word phrase, a 12-word phrase. You memorize that. If your government just taxes too much, it's too totalitarian, you cross the border, what are they going to do? Search you? How are they going to know you have 12 words memorized, right? So it dramatically moves the power dynamic back to the hands of the individuals. And this is why it's so important, guys, to take self-custody and to run your own node, because you're definitely going to have to do those things in the battle to come, because dying animals are ferocious, and these guys are going to try to pull all the punches in order to keep their Frankenstein zombie fiat system alive. But anyways, Phil, there was a software release today. Why don't you tell everybody about it?
Software releases. All right, we've got Spectre Desktop version 1.6.1 pre-5. All right, anyways, it's Spectre Desktop. It's a great multi-sig solution, great wallet. Check it out down below in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. All right, guys, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. Check out CryptoCloaks.com for the best 3D printed merch. Get yourself a Bitcoin grenade, 5% off down below in the link description. Anything off the score. And of course, Citadel 21, the Bitcoin cultural zine written by plebs. For plebs. Phil and I have written articles for them. Get yourself a physical copy. There's only 1,000 made. And of course, check out Pirate Hash. Really, really cool stuff there. Pedro says Genesis posters. You could put them. I think I see one in the back of Dylan's room, right, where it has the white paper and stuff like that. Definitely check out piratehash.com. And I want to give a shout out to our awesome guest. He is one of the two legendary Bitcoin Zoomers, him and Nick Can't Mine. These guys, they have such an amazing future ahead of them. They're so, they're ahead of the game, being so young. You can give Dylan a follow if you're not already. Follow him at Dylan Leclerc _. And definitely, I really recommend the deep dive with Bitcoin Magazine. It's a subscription service. You sign up and you get a newsletter every so often from Dylan. It has a whole analysis. I'm subscribed. Highly recommend it. But guys, that was our show. If you enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash that like button. And of course, if you want to continue hearing the catastrophic fails from Gary Gensler and all the fiat economists that are trying to keep the zombie alive, and the Bitcoin news from the blip blip perspective, definitely consider subscribing. And we will see you tomorrow, guys, for another episode of Simply Bitcoin.
The dinosaurs are going extinct.